Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Or I should say almost afternoon because there's been a substantial delay on my end between going out and watching the auroras last night, being very slow this morning, and having lots of technical difficulties. So thank you for being here and be patient. Okay, we want to talk about the solar flares, the massive amount of solar flares that have been pummeling us for the last week. Okay. But first, I want to say Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of us who are parenting, all of us who have a mother that we want to at least acknowledge that she birthed us and brought us into this world, whether she's passed, whether she's here. And we also want to acknowledge that nurturing energy that exists within all of us. So on Mother's Day, let's celebrate our own nurturing. And that's what we're going to use today with these solar flares. Okay. Makes sense, right? Okay. So, uh, it got to the point as I was going through the flares that it was like, high C, M, 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 M. And I've been keeping track of them and documenting them per day. And then, one X flare, two X flares, massive X flare. And then what I noticed is that we've had an X 5.89, and everyone's like, it's huge. And I wanted to start to go, well, wait, let me just check on some context things here, because solar flares go in an 11-year cycle. And so they start and they don't do anything for about 3 or 4 years. And then, occasionally goes from a little bit of low C's to a high C, for a year, and then high C, low M for a year. And so I'm going to say that we started really picking up on high level C's, higher M's that were rattling us between around November 2022. So we're not quite we're a year and a half into this. And for those of you who've been following me, it's almost as if I took all of my coaching of sensitivities and empathic and started to translate what are these solar flares doing to us, to our bodies. So you'll notice that there's symptom after symptom after symptom. And I had this really interesting woman put a comment in, and she said two things like, were there symptoms that existed before this weekend? And you know, yeah, they've been going on for about 18 months now, and they've been growing for some and reducing for others, because as we acclimate to the frequencies, as we get used to it, it's kind of like our new normal. So that's why I want to talk about normalizing the solar flares. The other thing is that I had a question of, because you're up north, is that a particular area where the symptoms are more extreme? And it's like, no, it's hitting the whole planet. I have clients in Great Britain. I have clients in Australia. I have clients in Florida. I have clients in California. And what we're seeing is that the symptoms are all the same everywhere. So just wanted to bring that into clarity, okay? So starting in November 2022, Pam Youngins started to go, hey, there's a solar flare thing happening. And that's when I was going like, yeah. And what does it mean? And so I started to research, like, what does it mean? What is a B class, a C, an M, and an X class mean? What does it mean in hertz and frequencies? And those are all in my past videos, so we can go back. And that there are symptoms. Some symptoms are consistent, and we've talked about them. Other symptoms that are coming up are some dry eyes, some inability to keep ourselves hydrated, some wobbly and dizziness that is very different than sort of the vertigo stuff that started, a year ago. So Pam and I have been going back and forth, and I kind of put all my people over to Pam to go find her. And then what I believe that is most important is, what do we do once we know this data, right? So this was a huge weekend. We had X class flares. We had M class flares. Okay, so I was able to print some things off. So this is the chart that says this is the sea level, right? And this is an M and this is an X. And so anytime you see, like right now, there's this red line that's saying we're just hanging out these days at a sea level, which is very different, because we used to hang out at an A or B level, but our new normal is at a high sea level right now. And I thought, that's phenomenal. Um, when we go to the K index, this is our normal, and this is what it looked like, and this is what our weekend looked like, right? Then on top of that, we had these enormous solar flare or solar storms. So here are the flares, and then this is just the wind. This is how high it is. And usually these aren't even on this chart at 500. They're down between 300 and 500, right? So this tells you that this is enormous. Now, two more things. Again, this is what the day-to-day stuff might look like. This is what our last 2 days look like, and then we started to go down last night, and then what we're not showing is that let's see, at 10:25 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, we had an X1. So we're back in the X's, and when we have X's in solar storms, this KP index is a 1 through 9. You can see we're hanging out at 9 out of 9. Sometimes we're over here at a 1 or a 2, or, we're just bouncing around over here. But to see something like this where it's all red and it's done is like, so it's a big weekend, right? And I have to tell you, I got really irritated when a girlfriend texted me and said, "Hey, Newsweek is carrying this article about the solar flares." And then another friend texted me and said, "Did you see the article on CNN about the flares?" And I'm like, sort of thank God they're starting to inform, because this is really important energy that we want to make sure we're not struggling with without understanding it. And where the hell have you been for 18 months? And why are we sensationalizing this now? I also noticed that there was some dialogue about, oh, biggest flare in this cycle, or huge flare, we need to be very careful. It's just like the Carrington, which is something that knocked the telegraph systems out in 1859. And I'm like, whoa, the fear tactics have picked up, and they're starting to work with you on the solar flares. So that's why we're going to break this down, and we're going to go really clearly through what we can expect with the solar flares and what's going on. So first, to date, in 2024, we've had 19 X flares so far, and it's May 12th. So we're not even halfway through the year. We've had 19 X flares. In 2023, we had 10 X flares through the whole year. In 2022, we had 7 in the whole year. And in 2021, we had 2. 2020, 0. And that was 0 for a period of time. So you can see that this system has been working its way up. So if we've gone from 10 last year to 19 so far in the first 6 years, it tells me that there's some big flares coming, and we're on our way up, right? So this X class of the X5.889, we're like, big flare. And what I want to remind us is that on February 22nd, we had an X6, which is bigger than that, right? It's bigger than that. And let me see if I can harness this. The X the X6 that we had in February, when I go to spaceweather.com and look at and you can just Google top 50 solar flares, and spaceweatherlive.com will give you the 50 top solar flares ever, right? Ever that they've been measuring. And the X5.89 was 27 out of 50. It's way down there. And then the big X6 was 26. So we have 25 bigger flares that have happened in history. So I want to put those in perspective. So let's take a breath here. We're increasing our awareness is all that's really happening. I don't think anyone talked about solar flares in 2009. What was it? 2003 to 2012. I don't think anyone was talking about flares in 98 to 2005. These are just not the things that came up, right? So what we're doing differently is that we're being very conscious, and we're tracking them, and we're noticing cause and effect. We're using data that's being put out by phenomenal agencies and groups, right? And they're saying, hey, this big thing happened. Then we get to take it and go, what am I noticing? Oh, I'm actually sleeping better. I'm getting used to these. I'm sleeping through them. Or I had an entire sleepless night. We're observing, we're noticing, we're deepening our self-care. And we're, this awareness just keeps getting bigger. For us to be this consciously aware as we're going into these flares is going to be fabulous, because I want to talk about the previous cycles from between 2011 and 2017, which was the previous 11-year cycle, right? There were 50 X-class solar flares, and the largest one that happened at that time was an X13.37. No one talked about it. It wasn't in the papers. There weren't articles. It wasn't on Facebook tracking, oh no, what happened to the solar flares? It was invisible to us, and it happened. Then we go back to 1997 to 2006, which was the previous 11-year cycle. And they ran, I said top 50 in that cycle, in the first 50, and then there were more. So I just said over 50 plus X-class flares in that period of time, in that phase. And the biggest one was X40 plus. It went off the charts. They couldn't measure it, right? The one below that was an X28.57. The one below that was an X24, an X24, an X20. So that tells me that we have some space to go, and that they're survivable, that that this is common, it's happened before, and we're doing it consciously, right? So what do we really want to pay attention to? So as I bring this, this data, this information, before I go into like a little bit of tips, what I want to do is I want to pay attention to, or want to bring to your attention, the way that the major arcana in the Light Seers deck really jumped out at me. So here's someone who's consciously harnessing. This is the Star, the Aquarian card. She's she's consciously harnessing the light that's coming towards her, right? This is the Hierophant. He's even joyfully feeling all of the sparkles and the energies. And these are all these same colors of what's coming in with the solar flares. This is one of my favorite Chariot cards ever. It's got the polarity of black and white. The horses are pulling this on these invisible sparkly threads. He's not even guiding them or holding on. He's almost in a position of surfing. And look at the dynamic yellows and oranges and reds of the light that's taking him forward. So he and his vehicle are going forward, right? And then when we go to the Wheel of Fortune, it's like we're going to go up and we're going to come down, and we're going to go up and we're going to come down. So how do you just sort of put your chest out and openly embrace what's going on, right? Judgment. You just allow yourself to transcend and go with this. And then, of course, there's the Fool, which is look at the sparkles, the light that are coming in. So when I'm looking at these cards, what they tell me is that we're on to something. We're holding on to something really big, and we're riding it. And we're riding it really consciously, really well informed, thanks to videos like this, and all of us who are talking and chatting it up and not putting fear into it, just putting understanding and reality into it, right? So what I want you to do is just keep looking at, keep checking on these videos. Of course, I want you to do that, like and share and pass them around, because the numbers are going up, and it means that people are starting to get curious. And I love being a resource for this, and love guiding you through this. Okay. And also look at Pam Youngins on Facebook. Look at spaceweather.com, find out who's stepping away from the sensationalizing and actually informing you, right? And then pay attention to things like the solar winds, storms, the geomagnetic storms, because when those things come in, they affect our energy system, they affect our anxiety, right? And so the more we know when they are, oh, that's going on, that makes sense. So I'm going to be a little bit more agitated, probably not the time to be in this environment or to take on this task, but to be kinder and manage myself, right? The auroras are going to come. They've been coming up with all these, whenever we have a huge bunch of flares and all of this, what's the best way to do it? Where the KP index is off the charts, where we're in the middle of this really big stuff, right? That's when the auroras come. and they came all the way down to the southern parts of the United States. I have a girlfriend in Florida who saw them, in the South Carolinas, in Texas. I mean, they're just beautiful. And keep in mind, they have a lot of. I'm sorry, I don't have my papers as organized as I want. The auroras are here because this KP index is high. So yes, they're beautiful. Yes, they have these sparkling lights, but when they come that big over the United States or over the northern hemisphere or up from the southern hemisphere, what's happening is that they're bringing that intensity to them. So you can notice that the light fills your body and it's sparkly, and yet it's also like, wow, I can't sleep when this is here. So just know that the auroras have equal amounts of energy with them, and they're beautiful, right? And then, connect with your body, connect with the symptoms and the influx of energy, and start to connect the dots. And as you go through and connect the dots, then you can go and address some of the symptom stuff that we've talked about. Now, I'm going to close this video at this time because with the Vimeo, I have a little bit of freedom to do a much deeper dive and hand you some golden jewels that sort of go a little bit more than what I want to do here on YouTube. And also, I want to protect those. And I also pulled my Osho Zen cards and got a fabulous reading. So please go down to the extended. It's a way to support me. It's a way to turn this video information into something that can support me, and I love doing it even more than the kind of work I was doing before. So that would be wonderful. So happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Enjoy these flares, ride them, play with them, partner with them, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.